hope no one got the J&J. I don't know, my daughter
I don't know.
texted me.
They're talking, they were supposed to do it tomorrow. I don't know. I'm waiting to hear.
Well, my daughter said, read up on it before you go do it anyway.
Good.
They suspended it this morning.
They
Good
didn't
morning.
suspend it, they just took a pause, but they haven't.
That's called suspending, isn't it?
Good morning. I'd like to call the Economic Development Authority meeting to order for April 13th, 2021. Start with a roll call, please, Charity.
Director Freeman, not here. Director Yanello,
Here.
Director Bowen,
Here.
Director Derby.
Here.
Director Fay. Here. Vice Chairman Metz.
Here.
And Chairman Booth.
Here.
And we have a quorum.
Thank you, Charity. This morning, we have two items on our consent agenda. First is approval of the minutes from our March 2021 meeting. And the second is our financial statement. Any discussion needed on consent agenda items? Hearing none, is there a motion for approval? Motion, is there a second?
Second.
And a second. If we can call it for a roll call, please.
Director Yanello,
Aye.
Director Bowen,
Aye.
Director Derby. Director Fay.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Metz.
Aye.
And Chairman Booth.
Aye.
Okay, approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Charity. Next item is public comments. Not seeing any. That will move us into our annual election of officers. Our first order of business is to nominate and vote in a secretary, which Charity has agreed to do historically. So I'm looking for a motion for a secretary. Okay, have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
I will do it by a voice vote. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, it's unanimous. Charity, thank you. And at this point, I turn it over to Charity for the election of remaining officers.
Okay, typically, it's come up that everyone running for office just remains in the office. If there's anyone interested in submitting their name or anyone else's name for an office, we can take that and we can actually do a paper vote on it. Otherwise, we can agree that Donald Booth is chairman, vice chairman is Alan Metz, treasurer Cliff Bowen, and so, is there any discussion or any, suggest someone or volunteer? Aside from that, I need a motion to adopt or continue our current slate.
I move that you,
You need a motion to continue the current slate.
Kathy,
I move that we continue the current slate.
okay, to continue our current slate of officers, Director Yanello,
Aye.
Director Bowman, Director Derby, Director Fay,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Metz, and Chairman.
Aye.
Okay, we have officers for the upcoming year.
Thank you, Charity. Next order of business, first item under new business is consideration of a proposed budget for fiscal year '22. Ms. Tanya's graciously agreed to join us this morning for benefit of the discussion.
Good morning. For those who do not know me, I am Tanya O'Connell. I am the Director of Finance and the current Acting Assistant City Manager here at Poquoson. Thank you for allowing me to present the budget to you. What you have is just the typical budget that we propose every year. We have a few fees from our bonds that we get. We have the YMCA, which is sadly wrapping down. They're getting ready to pay off their funds, so we will not get that, and then Beth Shalom. So you've got those two things coming in, as well as the BMP maintenance that we receive out here across the street. Other than that, We have our typical operating expenses, our property insurance for the land that we have across the street that we own, or the EDA owns, I should say, as well as the Alliance fee that we provide to them, and then some professional services. Everything you see here is just an estimate. If the board chooses, we can change this number at any time. So please feel free to ask any questions or any concerns you have. One note that you should see, the interest expense decreased a lot this year. It went from $30,000 down to $17,000. The city took an opportunity to refinance that debt, got great interest rates, so of course that saving was transferred over to the EDA as well.
Wonderful. Questions for Tanya? Seeing any, I think that we're looking for a motion for approval of the draft budget, or of the budget as presented.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I proposed the proposed budget for fiscal year 2022. I offer a motion that we accept this as submitted.
We have a second for that.
Is that Alan?
Alan? Call that for a vote, please.
Okay, to accept the budget as submitted by Finance, Director Yanello,
Aye.
Director Bowen.
Aye.
Director Derby. Director Fay.
Aye.
Vice Chairman Metz. And Chairman Booth.
Aye.
Okay, the
Thank you. Our next item of business is really looking to try to put a general policy in place for the benefit of the EDA and ultimately the benefit of the city to potentially enter into short-term seasonal leases for the use of food trucks or trailers or other, I'll call them mobile vendors, on property that is under the control of the EDA. Potential opportunity primarily exists at Messick Point with property that is under the EDA's control. And there has been some interest and discussion in possible user of that type of a lease. As has been previously discussed, it would be a non-exclusive type of a lease, meaning it would be open to multiple vendors should space permit. And the other aspect that kind of makes us a little unique is that they really have to be self-sufficient. There are no services that are there for power or water or any other utility, so it really is providing them a parking space in order to provide that. Dave, is there anything that I've glossed over in the summary here that you think is a high point worth mentioning?
No, I think you presented that very well, Mr. Chairman. I think perhaps I might just allude to the fact that Charity provided an aerial photo of the exact location. It's the former residence of a Mr. Thompson. The EDA acquired the property some years ago. The residence has been removed, but the driveway remains. And it is notionally on the corner across the street, pretty much from the public boat ramps. I think it's ideally located for this type of service. I can tell you that the interested prospect who we met with on site last month, as you alluded to, she actually is very self-sufficient. She's got a generator, got all the things she needs in the 24-foot trailer, at least for this initial one. Got her health department permit, understands the need for insurance, is working already with the Commissioner of Revenue to make sure that things are straight as far as any associated fees that would be required. I do think the authority's consideration of a blanket and long-term view of this type of non-exclusive agreement is very prudent, because we're hopeful that we can get some interest and activity down here where we really haven't had very much in recent years. With my other hat on as Parks and Recreation person, it'd be nice if folks are using a public recreational facility, maybe to grab a refreshment after after they conclude the day or before they go out. So anyway, I think, other than that, I think it's very beneficial to have a discussion today. And I did let this prospect know that I would contact them as soon as I could after the meeting to let them know the consideration and decision of the board.
So really, I think the goal for this morning is if, I guess first off, the interest or the idea of this concept, since it's something certainly new to Bessic Point in particular, but potentially new to the EDA. And so we'll kind of start there. Is there any thoughts or ideas?
Would we be charging like a small fee, monthly fee?
I think it's where the conversation probably would need to go if there's an interest in entertaining it. If there's an aversion to it, then certainly we would need to go down that road. But I would believe that there would be some lease fee agreement on a short-term or a seasonal basis that could be entered into.
Mr. Moore, are there any ordinances or rules from the planning department that we have to also follow, other than just getting the regular permits, the health permit, and the other things that have to be considered about the use of the property for this and what the restrictions are that we need to be aware of?
Property is zoned B2, so it's zoned business. That makes it an appropriate site for this kind of thing. I would suggest that whatever the EDA does, that they require coordination with the city, particularly, like I say, the Commissioner of Revenue has a licensing requirement. I just don't remember whether the zoning ordinance, at one point in time, it was before city council to do some type of food truck provision. My memory, it didn't pass. It was brought up as to what they wanted to do, but I don't believe council ever adopted it. But that's something, make sure we coordinate with the city, whatever we do.
Yeah, I seem to remember this topic coming up myself when I was working here, and so I didn't know if they ever did anything that we need to be.
It came up when the barbecue truck was parked up next to the drugstore.
That's right.
And there was some questions about whose property was it on and were they licensed, and I just remember the discussion, but quite frankly, the synopsis is firing on all cylinders this morning, so I can't remember exactly what they got passed on.
No, well, that's a good answer to my question, because I just want to make sure that we review that, make sure there aren't additional zoning or the code of ordinances don't. Yeah, make sure we coordinate that, so, because it could be something that might be prohibitive for the vendor. I don't know.
I
think we
would
ought to
like to
review.
just mention that recently we've had other inquiries for other parts of the city, so I had drafted just sort of an overview of what they need to have business license, these kind of things. But the only issue that really did come up was that they had to either own the property or have a written permission from the property owner, and it had to be zoned. They couldn't be, residential, or it had to be zoned appropriately for the use. So those were the primary issues that were looked at.
Yeah, and my concern would be if we do pass some type of document that would govern this type of thing, that we need to consider, if we're not going to restrict it for that one area down there at Messick Point, that we have to treat every other vendor the same, and they might want to open up in different areas of the city. So we might want to consider how we word that and whether or not we want to see this everywhere or just in certain locations.
Great point. That's a great point.
I think overall it's a good thing. The money that may or may not be involved in any lease fees is probably nominal, but I think we have to look at it as far as what kind of amenity this is. And I think from that point of view, it's positive. You want activity, you want things happening down there. The only thing, big picture, I think we have to also keep our eye on is, let's say we have a barbecue restaurant down there. We can't let somebody just set up shop and compete with someone permanently or trying to do business. So I think we have to be very, focused on that. But for, beyond that, it's probably a good thing. Obviously, we want to be cognizant and probably keep the lease short so that if there was some kind of problem that we haven't envisioned, at least we have flexibility to opt out of it. But overall, it's, we want activity, we want things happening.
Yeah, I agree.
Usually if you can get like 2 or 3 different kinds of food trucks down at any one place, you know, maybe then you get a band or something down there, music going, people are listening, they're coming down to use the, you know, the facilities, you know, just wander around, enjoy the park, enjoy the open air, and then grab some food truck stuff, and, okay, the kids want ice cream, and Dad wants a barbecue sandwich, and somebody else wants a hamburger or a hot dog, you know, you could do that. And
Well, I think there's an aspect that is the expectation that it becomes a, I'll say, a semi-permanent fixture, meaning that it's set there and they don't move it in and out on a day-to-day basis, or is it something that would be permitted during whatever the period of the lease is to kind of stay there and just be opened or closed at the hours they choose to?
I wonder if it wouldn't be in our best interest to do our due diligence and just kind of research the zoning ordinances and the code and make sure we understand exactly what would be required of the vendors to do this, and consider whether or not, when we can take time to consider the locations that we want, we approve this by location. And then I guarantee it, at some point, we're going to have to address the alcohol issue. There may be a request, maybe not from the vendors that we've already spoken to or has expressed an interest, but it becomes a gathering place and there's music, like you say, that generally is the next question. And I think we got to consider those things before we put something into play.
My initial sense is that we're merely providing the space, the piece of property for it, and that any permitting aspects specific to music, alcohol, food, health, city, business license, et cetera, really ultimately falls on the business.
Okay.
And if they're not licensed to transact the business within the state, within the city, within the requirements that are there, so that would kick into the zoning aspect
Yep, I think so.
of it as well, then, sorry, I mean, that wouldn't work, but the geographies around town, I think that certainly does begin to play a factor into it.
I don't know if we have to make a global policy about, every property. I mean, if somebody wants to do it across the street, we can always just say no. I think it's our prerogative just to say, no, we don't want that on this. It might be a pretty big undertaking to try to create a huge policy that covers every situation, so I think we should probably just address them one by one for now, at least that's.
I think you can cover it straightforwardly by limiting what you're doing to the utilization of the ground, and then put in that author, you can call it a license, lease, whatever you want to call it. You can require that they must comply with all, state and local ordinances and statutes in order to be in business. I mean, not that you're making no finding about their compliance.
Is there a target on what an acceptable, say, lease rate, for lack of a better term, may be for something like that? Kind of in Alan's camp, I think it's nominal at best.
I was gonna say $50, I don't know. You're talking an ice cream truck that may or may not do business, and she's, they're not gonna make a lot.
Well, I think I would say this in regard to the initial Poquoson resident prospect that's interested. Her intention, as we discussed previously, is to go down there, weather permitting, and at Messick Point, sometimes the weather is not permitting. But to go down there several times a week, I'm assuming she'd like to begin as soon as the weather is reasonable at the discretion of the EPA. Obviously, it's going to be seasonal, so I would guess probably late April, May, through maybe the early fall. I don't know that we have a really good idea of exactly what kind of revenue could be produced from this venture. It's really the first one of this nature. I know some years ago, we had, Skid Joiner had done something down there as far as like a fish, bait location, but this is different. This is a commodity food sale. I think if the weather's hot and it's nice, you'll get good sales. If not, it might be de minimis, which you'll get. So I don't think that helps with the number, but I just, I don't think we know at this point. Well, certainly we don't know.
To me, you're not doing this for income, you're doing this to hopefully promote more people to be down there. So therefore, to me, it needs to be minimal.
Yep.
And normally, it's month to month.
Correct.
The ones I know about are month to month, and renting them, and the thing to remember is that you're renting them a parking spot. I mean, that's it, you know? So, to me, especially now, you can always change later. It's just saying, we're gonna rent this parking spot, and that's all we have to do. With the city's up to taking care of everything else. I make it very minimal. I mean,
And the insurance requirement, they gotta get named, the EDA is covered under their insurance. So,
Wayne, maybe you can chime in here. I think we're all, I agree with it. I don't know about the month-to-month technically. I mean, that's, you know, you have to be a 30 day, it could be 59 days before you can get somebody out of something on a month-to-month basis. I just envision being able to, from our end, maneuver quicker than that. And again, I'm not talking about them per se, but just if something was going on and you just, it almost seems like we ought to be able to just cease this quickly. I mean, they're not doing anything but showing up with their trailer. It's not like we're harming them, you know, by getting them out of there. I just worry about a month-to-month, because it could be a 45, almost 60-day window if we had to remove a situation. Wayne, I mean, could we almost like terminate at will?
Thinking off the top of my head, I think you would probably, they said, make it something like on a seasonal basis, give you a 6-month lease, with the right to cancel on 30 days' notice, and treat it almost like you would if you went down to the shipyard and rented the parking space. You pay your $250 a month, and you got a parking space for the month. And you don't pay it the next month, guess what? You don't have a parking space. So I don't think it has to be, but so complicated.
I just worry about the 30-day notice.
This will give rise to problem areas, and we're not so far into it that you can't tweak it and make it so you're not creating problems. But no, get something started. I don't think it needs to be very complicated. What I see is the second person coming up now wanting to be there, and then the question is, they also want to sell ice cream, and, you know, I think that we need to be cognizant of what was said. What we're doing, we're not competing with either somebody we've already given permission to, or to a brick and mortar business that's nearby that you're going to affect their business.
I would definitely limit their menu. Anybody's just, you know, hey, sell all the ice cream you want, but you're not gonna do X, barbecue or something. I do worry about this, the 30-day notice. Like I said, I mean, that can push almost to 60 days to remove somebody.
Let's do it on the form of a license. Instead of being a lease, just give them a license to park at a parking spot, and that it can be, terminated at will. I mean, they don't get any particular long-term benefit.
in all honesty, I was thinking more of the person too that's gonna be doing this. They need to be comfortable to know that they're not gonna be stuck, for 6 months doing something, if you know what I'm trying to say. They go down there, it doesn't work, well, we're gonna say, we're ready, we're gone. We want it to be equal both ways. Yeah. I know in Newport News and Newport News Shipyard both, they try not to have, as you're saying, similar, and they have lines of trucks inside the yard and out. And, they try to keep it where you are offered different things at different spots. They don't allow anyone to be in the same spot that's got the same, as we were talking there, you don't want a barbecue trailer sitting down there when you have a barbecue restaurant. I think it can be real simple. All we need to do is just like you just said, license to park, and then we revoke it if we don't like it.
I have a question. There is a brick and mortar restaurant on the other side of the yacht club that before the pandemic, I don't know if it's still open. But ice cream is fine because they don't
sell ice cream on a regular basis. I mean, I think they might have a dessert ice cream, but that's about it. I would be concerned about this extending to anybody else, but we're only giving permission for them to use our property, not to park down there in Messick Point. So you're only gonna get one food truck down there in that area. The next one's gonna have to go in the parking lot or someplace else, which we don't control, correct?
Well, that's a good point. When we met in March and walked your property, it's about, I want to say 0.15 acres. The parking, the pad itself probably would lend itself to maybe two trucks. You own some additional green space property there.
Green space, but
But
not
I don't
parking.
know that that's where you would want to park a
in
food
Messick
truck or
Point.
trailer. But I do think you could reasonably have two, depending on the size of
The
the
other
truck.
thing was that at Langley Air Force Base, I know that the food trucks there had a fee they had to charge. And so they charged an extra 20% on the sale to pay Langley Air Force Base MWR. And that just kind of like drove the food trucks out eventually because people said, well, wait a minute, I can just go around the corner or something. I'd be concerned about the fee. The other thing would be, who's going to clean up? You know, they've got to be responsible for policing up the area. Otherwise, it's our property, and technically, the city could come to us and say, you need to clean up that area, it's a trash bin, and then we're responsible for sending somebody down there and paying somebody to go clean up the area if there's a lot of ice cream cups and spoons, cigarette butts and stuff on our property from that food truck. So, something to consider also. I'm in favor of not doing any kind of fee at this point, because I think it's a risky proposition on her part. I don't see the revenue coming in, at least initially. You know, I hate to say that I want to be like our real estate owners here that don't charge anything at first and then say, well, gee, now that you're established, boom. But the EDA is about bringing in businesses and helping them get started, not about making a profit. So, my comment.
And I just believe eyes wide open, no surprises. That's I'm absolutely for this proposal. I think it's great, but again, I think whatever the fee is ought to be an annual one-time for the license, just to show their commitment to doing it and doing it the right way. Not that they're- Yeah, and then something that's not cost prohibitive to the vendor so they can make money. We want them to be successful, but I just, like you said, the trash issue, I just want to make sure that we got our eyes wide open. Potential pitfalls. We won't get them all, but we just ought to consider it and make sure that we got those issues covered before we start issuing licenses there. But I think it's a great idea. I think it's an awesome idea. And we'd like to help her.
So I guess before us, we've got one perspective that's come. Are we interested in proceeding with a license on a trial basis? And do we want a fee connected to that, whether one time or tied to a time frame? And then we can work with Wayne and the city for drafting a license agreement that would put in the revocation requirements as well as other aspects that would be connected to that.
I agree with that. I'm not personally too focused on the fee. Well, and I mean, who knows, if this thing ever got going or more trucks, we can always ebb and flow and have different ideas. But just another idea to throw out, if we're worried about the cleanup situation, is a very good point. You know, we could have a deposit that's refundable, you know, to help towards that, you know, $200-300, and you get it back or something other than a cleanup. Just spitballing some ideas.
I mean, one potential would be just to do a flat, I'm sure make up a number, $50 fee or whatever the number may be, so that I'll say there is kind of a skin in the game, but then if that gave them the license permission with the expectation of cleaning, could we tie a fee back to them if we had to pay someone to come in to do the cleaning? part of that. I know if you got multiples, that becomes a problem, but.
Fee that small is usually also just to pay for the processing of the paperwork and employees' time they're taking the license. That's pretty much what that covers.
Were they paying that for some of the other license?
They would have to have a health permit, which inspection, whatever the
Yeah, they'll,
apparatus is.
I think if I'm not mistaken, then I would defer to the Commissioner of Revenue, and to Wayne's point earlier, they may, and I stress may, need a peddler's license. That's something that I've heard from the Commissioner of Revenue as part of the discussion. I know that, that this interested applicant is already discussing that with them. I think Wayne's point and the chief as well, to make sure that whatever the authority decides to do, that it's cohesively done, and that all the city ordinances and codes and requirements are met, be it insurance, be it something that's written in the simple lease that you're required to make sure that you clean up each day, those types of things. Obviously, she will be right with the Commissioner of Revenue's office and Wally and, codes compliance and community development before she ever goes down there, and she's well aware of that. She wants to comply before she ever gets started. So, but I think as long as her performance down there as a vendor tracks closely and is in compliance with all the city codes and ordinances, I think we're in good shape. I think the number, whatever fee you might charge, I think Wayne's point about it being maybe, or someone's point about it being seasonal, kind of cover the season if you want. I don't know, Wayne, correct me if I'm wrong, this particular initial license release, I don't know that the EDA would be wed to it forever if they want to tweak it and change it for the future growth. If we have more interested food trucks and trailers and things, then maybe, this is the first time out of the gate. So there may be things you tweak later.
What I would suggest is if you're in favor of doing this, you allow the staff and myself to put together a simple license. I just jotted down the point that I thought we talked about. It would be a monthly license terminated at will. If you wanted a cleanup deposit, if you're not going to charge much in the way of rent, then I would require a refundable trash cleanup, for $100 or whatever, if you had to send somebody down to do it and terminate it. And then, that you have to comply with all state and city ordinances. I'm particularly concerned about, she says she has a health permit. Well, you wanted to have a health permit. She's selling food to the public. You wanted to have, I think she does have to have a peddler's license with the city. The property is zoned correctly, so I think you have a minimum number of problems here. And unless you want to set, I suggest you determine whether or not you want to charge for this monthly operation. Other than that, I would have the staff and myself get together and put a license, email it to everybody to look at, and say, unless you bark, we're going to proceed with this lady on the.
Yeah, I agree. Personally, I don't worry about charging them per se, but I think a $100 or $200 deposit on the front side. If something goes, if the first week there's trash everywhere, we got two things we can do. One, we terminate her immediately. Two, we take her cleanup. That's true for the second month or the third month. So we have a little bit of that oversight and control of the situation. And then secondly is to have language in there that's broad in our favor about not competing with the brick and mortar. We don't want to get into like shopping centers. You can have barbecue, but not French fries, and that just becomes a mess. So again, it needs to be somewhat at our will to just say, look, if you're competing with them, we're not going to get in a sword fight about it. We're just going to terminate you. That's all the stress.
We also have to add something about liability. We're the property owners.
She
so
says she has insurance. We would require you to be
Additionally
insured.
insured. Absolutely.
To me, a lot of this stuff we're talking about will still fall under the city.
Yes.
Of it, because basically, like I said, you're renting a parking space. Luckily, they already have restrooms, they already have parking. So you don't have to worry about people on the street getting hit or something like that. That doesn't come into play. To me, I just see it, just as Mr. Moore said, in compliance with. We're
I
gonna,
suggest that you authorize either Dave or I to go down at least once a week, have an ice cream and check it, make sure.
Chairman, I have a motion that we request that Mr. Moore to work with city staff to prepare such a document that we could present to the vendor for our approval at the next meeting.
That it's already spring and they're ready to go. Possible that we could approve something after we email it out, that we can proceed, as opposed to waiting for another meeting?
By email.
Okay.
Are we all though in agreement that we're not gonna charge, we are gonna charge, do we want a deposit? I
The
mean,
only question I think is,
yeah.
charge something besides a deposit.
License, I think we just ought to take the deposit and let the release go.
So a cleanup deposit.
Cleanup deposit.
Right.
So I'll amend my motion. I recommend that we approve the concept of extending a lease to a vendor, and that we have Mr. Moore prepare such a lease for us that would include a deposit specifically relating to trash cleanup, one that is refundable at the end of the season, and that we approve that now, so once it's prepared, we can move forward.
Deposit of how much?
$200. It's a lengthy motion, I'm sorry, but
And no,
No fee.
no rent.
Just a quick question, Wayne. So this, what you're preparing, just so I think everybody understands, this is not an open-ended term. This is for this season, I think.
it's a license terminated at will. So you can give it to them this week and take it back next week.
Term can be terminated by either party.
Yes,
That
by
way.
either party.
So, look, if they want to stay until December, I don't think we're going to be over here objecting to it for some reason.
They wouldn't do if they weren't making money.
I'm not worried about putting a deadline in there.
Maybe hot chocolate, coffee, and apple cider, but good point.
And I think we've got to allow ourselves some time to get the refund back to them, 30 days or something. So it may be a process for the finance department to get that done, so.
Have to so that it's encouraging the operation, not trying to make it punitive.
Right.
But I think we need to be able to step in to protect ourselves if it's necessary. And explain that to the tenant, that, you know, we're in favor of the operation, but you gotta conduct it properly or we'll terminate it.
There's a motion made. Is there a second? I have a motion, second. And if we can,
Approve a concept
For the lease.
The motion is to approve a license to operate a mobile food truck at Message Point. There will be a deposit of $200 for cleanup. There will be no fee charged for the parking privilege, and the terms and conditions will be worked up between the staff and the city attorney.
Do you want the address for y'all's property in the motion, or? Okay, so that doesn't need to be in the motion. Okay.
deposit refundable, no fee. The termination date of the season is the end of the season or the end of
At will.
21?
at will.
At will. Okay.
For either
Okay.
party. So that way she's comfortable too.
That motion.
Have a
Respect-
motion, I think. We'll take a roll call for Director Yanello,
Aye.
Director Bowen,
Aye.
Director Derby, Director Fay,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Metz, and Chairman Booth.
Aye.
Okay, we're approving, moving forward.
Thank you, Charity.
Hey, side note on that, anything you guys can do to, I don't know, what promotions or, I'm all in favor of throwing the sign, any marketing materials, I mean, put it out there that this is a amenity for the summer. offer that up if we can.
Promote, along with all our other businesses. I think it would, I think the public would be very interested to know there's going to be an
Yeah, you
ice
don't really
cream
drop
location.
by there. I mean, it's hard to advertise. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, Dave was extolling his virtues as a sign guy before the meeting began, so.
Modesty permits me. But no, sure, I think we'll do whatever we can to, we all want that to be successful. It's for the good of the community that it is.
Yep.
And we will work closely.
Agenda this morning have nothing under unfinished business. Staff activities, Dave or Charity, anything to report?
I would say that staff continues to follow closely and work with the Small Business Development Center and other regional groups to understand federal rescue plan opportunities for grants and other types of support for our business community. Charity continues to send out constant contact information to our businesses to let them know that this is coming, and it's probably taken a little longer than we all would like for it to get here. But one of the most important things that we have conveyed to the businesses is you need to be ready. Please be ready if you'd like an opportunity for these grants and this funding, because there's going to be a line. So have your documentation ready to submit, because in my mind, those who submit early have the best opportunity to get funding. The other thing, not to steal Charity's thunder, because she's been instrumental in our representative with Community Development Block Grant. There is a possibility, Charity, you correct me if I'm wrong, but there may be the possibility of some additional funding through that highly successful business grant program. We've partnered with Williamsburg and York County quite successfully. And I think the intention is certainly there for us to try to proceed. If there's additional funding, we want it for our businesses. Charity?
We'll find out, not this week, next week, but very soon, if it's going to be approved. So we'll certainly promote it to our businesses and just help them get over the last little moving forward, make up for all their losses over the past year. It could happen. But there's other federal and state grants that the newsletter puts it out there to them, including links so that they can go apply for those as well.
Good.
Do we know what the Economic Development Authority in Williamsburg did to bring in 2 new restaurants in an area that's already flooded with a lot of restaurants? I mean, it was news that the EDA was responsible for 2 new restaurants coming into Williamsburg by their incentives, but they didn't say what those incentives were and how that worked.
We can certainly make that call to our peers in Williamsburg to get that question answered. And Director Yanello, thank you for jogging my memory, because we will have a new business, a new restaurant opening, hopefully in late May is what we understand, the Blue Crab and Purple Pig in the former Kentucky Hut. And
Cutting the grass now.
Yep, and their monument sign has recently been installed. We've talked with and met with the owners, and that particular restaurant is going to be, what we're told, upscale comfort food. And I said, well, I think that's going to do great. And they're already establishing close ties. It's going to be a farm-to-table type concept. They're already working with local vendors, farmers, to try to get the freshest products they can that represent the area. The Blue Crab, of course, representative of the Chesapeake Bay and here. But the Purple Pig is a nod to the fact that we have a world famous barbecue and pork supplier just across the way. And so they'll have some of those dishes as well. And we've seen pictures, Charity actually visited with them. We've seen what they've done to the interior, and it's going to be very nice. And it'll be a different look than you might have seen in the past at other establishments in that particular location. They got a different concept. So I think it'll be a welcome addition to the fine restaurants we already have in the community.
So have we done anything with the old Farm Fresh building, anything going on there that we?
We've not seen activity. We have certainly talked to the owners of the shopping center and continue to market and get the most up-to-date marketing information they have to represent regionally, of course, in the Hampton Roads area, that there is an opportunity there for 30,000 square feet of retail space. You know, I know that what they have done, they have moved McDonald's nursery into the parking area, and of course, anticipation of CVS, you know, take down the old BB&T structure, and CVS will be building the pharmacy there. So there needed to be a move, but we're happy that we were able to keep that business in the community, and, you know, we certainly applaud the proprietor for making sure they stayed in the community, because it's a nice service there too. So that's as much as we know at this point, but we continue to market the former Farm Fresh space and hope that there'll be interest sooner rather than later.
I was gonna, my daughter was up from Atlanta, and she said, you know, it'd be really great if they had one place where, you know, they could take that building and say, okay, we're gonna have a karate studio in here, and a dance studio in here, and a gymnastics studio in here, and one place that the parents could go, okay, kids, you're going to your, your lessons, and boom, you're done. And they also, a lot of places in Atlanta, they do, like, they'll have little beauty salons, barber shops, whatever, that kind of thing, all in one place, but they're owned by individual people, and they have their own little cubicle, and that idea for chopping up that.
We could certainly recommend that.
We're just looking for indoor activities too for kids, because not a lot right now.
Anything else under staff? Our next meeting date scheduled back on our normal, usually scheduled time, first Tuesday of the month, May 4th, back here at 8:30. No other discussion, then we can adjourn. So, thank you, guys.
Thank you.